tired, sick and tired of love. I got my fill of love from below and above. If you don't know me, it's Eden as in the Garden of. And we know how that turned out. Watch everyone like me. I want everyone to like me real bad. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's slow, it's slow, it's slow. Yes.
No, 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 no. Yes. No, 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 no.
Oh, I think I love the best.
Even with a good beginning, there's no guarantee you're winning. Even with the best of chances, life can kick you without chances. Hoping for the best, expect the worst.
Google me. The message that Madeline Kahn was sending straight to me was have it all, even. Be sexy and funny and gorgeous even while you sing high. Oh, did anybody break a glass?
Happy Monday, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. Who or what are you celebrating tonight? Tonight, we are going to celebrate in the Garden of Eden, and she is right here. I am so excited to have her. She is one of our sponsors for the month, and she is a phenomenal entertainer. I have to tell you, from the moment that I announced that you were going to be on the show, everybody said, oh my God, I love her. 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 So you are so loved in the cabaret community. You're loved by your students. You're loved by your audiences. You're loved by me. You're loved by everybody. And tonight I celebrate you. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Richard.
I want to begin by asking, as I like to ask my guests, who or what are you celebrating today?
Monday. Monday is worth celebrating. And yeah, right? It's Monday. We just had 3 days of rain from an errant hurricane. And so I don't have to water any plants here in southern Rhode Island, which is great. So we can celebrate that. And I just had a rehearsal with a client who has her own show on Saturday night, and she did a great job. So I'm celebrating that. And yeah, just being on the planet's pretty darn wonderful, isn't it?
It sure is. And you live in Rhode Island. Are you in Providence?
I'm south of Providence, about 35 minutes south. But, you know, it's not a very big state. So you can get across the whole state in like less than an hour.
That's true. That's true. I have performed in Rhode Island. I performed at Theater by the Sea. And I'm how far are you from Theater by the Sea? Matunic, Rhode Island, by the way.
Yeah, about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And yeah, and I've gone there a few times and gone to see performers. I think I auditioned once or twice, but I'm not the kind of chick they want. So.
Well, it's their loss. You know, I want to give a shout out to someone who was on your show who also said that she loves you, and that's Patrice McKinley.
Yes.
She also is one of our sponsors, and I just started working with Patrice. She's now my career coach, and I love her. And I'm reading Emmett Fox, and Emmett Fox said, if it's not for you, it's not for you. And I believe that. And so if you have auditioned for them and they have passed on you, for whatever reasons, it's not meant for you at that time. Do you believe that yourself?
I do. I absolutely do. I mean, my whole journey into cabaret came as a result of other doors slamming in my face, which is how it happens for everybody, right?
Yes. Yes.
Nobody is going to get up in the morning when they're 3 and say, I really want to be a cabaret singer. No, we don't say that. We want to do musical theater or sing opera, and I did both of those things. Or we want to do, music of somehow, and actually started as a classical piano player. So it kind of, developed over time. But of course, like everybody else, all of those, doors closing led to better ones opening for me. And I'm really happy with where I am now.
Well, we're going to talk about those doors opening and closing. First of all, I mean, speaking of 3 or 4, here you are with your very handsome parents. What do you recall? I mean, obviously, this is your PlayStation. I love your little kitchenette there at the table and everything. What are your memories of this photograph?
That my dad had a timer on the tripod, and that we had to take several shots to get it right. And this was me growing up in Columbus, Ohio. So my dad was a piano player, and he was working for Ohio Bell at the time, actually. My mom was taking care of me, but she was an artist and a singer. So I come from a musical family, and my mother's name was Risa. She was named for an opera singer from the 1940s named Risa Stevens.
Oh, yes, I love her. The Chocolate Soldier.
That's right. That's right. And her father loved to listen to the Met broadcasts. So when she came, they decided to name her Risa. So she gave her daughters unusual names. So I'm Eden, like the Garden of, and my sister is Liana, Liana, like a flowering vine. And my dad is Ron. So he got the normal name.
Are your parents still around?
My mother died in 2016. Right. And my dad is still around, and he's a pianist. He's a performer as well. So we get together, we talk about, how was your gig, Dad? Oh, mine was fine. Eden, how was your gig? And he plays in assisted living in Columbus, Ohio.
God bless him. I mean, and God bless you for having that, because I'm just the complete opposite of that. I grew up at a tobacco farm in South Carolina, and I was as far removed from that world or this world as one could possibly be. But I asked for a photograph of you around this time frame, because to me, the 5-year-old self, the 3-year-old self, the 4-year-old self, and I love that photograph because there your parents are, going on this journey with you, wherever it is that you're taking them, and they are there to support you. It's before life begins to tell you who you should or should not be. Once you start going into school, teachers start saying you should or should not be doing this. Your peers start telling you you should or should not be doing this. When did you know that you wanted to pursue a career as an entertainer?
Oh, pretty early. I think by the time I was, 11 or 12? At first, I thought I was going to be a meteorologist. I really liked severe weather. And I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, where we have a lot of tornadoes. And I would listen on the little weather, channel, the weather station and things like that. But it was really the drama of it. I think that's what it was. But I was always singing and always playing. And my dad was my first piano teacher when I was 4. It lasted maybe a month, right? It's really hard to teach your own kids. So then he turned me over to somebody else, and I was with her for about 12 years. So I thought I was going to be a piano player. But then I was always singing and helping other people, too. My first voice student was when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
So I realized, I think, from a young age that music was going to be some part of my life. But like other ones, it was kind of hard to admit that in some ways. Am I really going to do this? And do I understand what that means to have a musical life? So there was still some back and forth in my head, even though I was doing it constantly. I started playing for piano in my choir class when I was 8. The first song I ever played by ear was "Summer Nights" from Grease.
Wow.
Because, it was in Brownies, and everybody in Brownies was singing it. And I just sat there and I realized I could do it. I thought, how can I do this? I don't know how, but I'll do it. Summer lovin' had me a blast. That made me very
Summer lovin' happens so fast.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And if you're going to do a song, do that one, right? 'Cause I was hearing it on the radio all the time. I just have a really good ear. So it was that I didn't realize, I could do this for a living. I thought it was really fun. But then as I got older and I started working with really good teachers who were doing this for a living and performing and teaching, I realized I was going to do it. And then I started voice lessons when I was 12 or 13. And I saw my teacher, who was a 6-foot-tall Texan named Paul Hickfang, right? 6'7". And he was a professor at Ohio State in opera. And I watched him perform in La Boheme. And that really did it. I saw him do that, and I thought that's what I want to do.
Wow. Now, I'm older than you are. I know I am. But I'm a product of 1960s and 70s television. Mm-hmm. And I know...
Not that far apart, Richard.
Okay. But you also, for me, it was, watching these variety shows on television and saying that's the world that I wanted to be a part of. And I know, and we're going to talk about your upcoming show in a few moments and all of the elements of that. But you saw Madeline Kahn on television, and she had a major impact on you. That's not just PR fluff that I'm reading about. That's absolutely true. Am I correct?
Yes. I think she was the answer to so many questions I had. And I found her by accident. It was in between that period when you couldn't see a lot of movies on the Late Show, right? Or they weren't playing her movies on the Late Show, and HBO was not yet a thing. So I just lucked into her doing commercials. And I knew about her from Clue more than anything. That was the beginning of my consciousness.
Was that the first movie that you saw of her? I was going to ask.
Yeah, it was. And so I knew she was funny, but I thought she was really a straight man. I had no idea this other stuff she did. And I heard people talk about Young Frankenstein or Blazing Saddles, but I didn't see that until much, much later. So, but I saw this commercial that she did, which I thought was screamingly funny. Do you want me to do it for you?
Oh, yes.
Okay. All right. Madeline Kahn on Having It All. What is this fascination we have with having it all? Haven't you ever wanted to have it all? Just a tiny bit. Michelob Light has it all. Superb taste and a less filling beer. But is having it all the answer? Is it really so wonderful to be wealthy, glamorous, and have an unbelievable singing voice? Yes!
I love it.
Michelob Light, you can have it all. So what I got from that is have it all. Sing high. Be funny. Be a soprano. And that's what I wanted to do.
I'm going to drop a name. I got an email today from somebody from Clue. No, because 9 years ago today, I interviewed her on stage in New York City, and we were sharing photographs from that evening.
Was it? Can I say who I think it is?
Yes.
Was it Leslie Ann Warren?
It was Leslie Ann Warren.
Yes.
And we've remained friends. That's another show. I mean, with Madeline, it was me with Leslie, and Clue. I cannot get enough of that movie.
She was so good.
It's just such a fun movie. And of course, do you have a favorite Madeline Kahn movie?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Blazing Saddles, pretty darn wonderful. What's Up, Doc is funny. Young Frankenstein. I think that's the one. But I had to do a lot of research, to find out about her. So I watched the television show that she did in the 80s called Oh, Madeline.
I remember it well.
Yeah. And it was, it wasn't as much fun as I think she all wanted it to be. But the movies are so wonderful. And then her one-offs.
And do you do anything from her forgotten film?
Oh, you mean Judy Berlin or?
No.
No. I guess I don't because I've forgotten what the forgotten film is, Richard.
Catwoman on Mars.
Ah! Maybe for the sequel, Richard. It took a lot to put this show together. And by the way, I'm a little hot. Do you mind if I put on something a little more comfortable?
Go ahead. Wow. We're both wearing our red sequins.
You said red. I love red. I wear
Yes.
red all the time. So,
Yes.
and I just had this sitting around. I was cleaning today in this, and I thought, what the heck?
Well, good for you.
Yeah,
Great for you. So when was that moment? I mean, you're playing for the Brownies. These things are starting to happen. When was the moment that you decided, I'm going to make this a career?
When I actually got accepted to do it in college, I think is what it was. It's like, okay, I'll go to college to do this. And I went to University of Cincinnati, called CCM, College Conservatory of Music. And I went in as an opera major. So, but it was a very competitive environment because it's a wonderful school. And as soon as I got there,
so many incredible people came through those doors.
Yeah, and a lot of them are really famous now. And I can, I'm less famous. But yeah, when I was there, it was Scott Coulter. Right? Mark Oswald was the big opera guy, and he's at the Met now with his wife Belinda. And so I was there just for opera, and the musical theater people were all in their own world and a whole other part of the thing. So I just had musical theater girls who lived across from me in the dorm and were really noisy. That's what I remember about them. Because they would just break into, show tunes at 2 o'clock in the morning when I was trying to get my sleep. So, but I went in because I had this high voice, and my high school teacher, Professor Hickfang, had trained me classically because that was the only kind of training I could get back then. So it seemed to be a natural fit, but I was always trying to be funny because I had Madeline in the back of my head. I can be funny, right? But there's just not a lot of humor in opera. if you get out of Deflator Mouse, you know, the laughing song, the laughing song, Richard? It's too funny. Ha, ha, ha. Yes, excuse me. Ha, ha, ha. I can help it. Ha, ha, ha. Please amuse me. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, God. All right, that's what we get. We get that and we glitter and be gay. Glitter and be gay. That's the part I play. Right? That's what passes for funny for Sopranos. But I'd seen Madeline on that 30-second commercial. I was like, how come she gets to do that? She gets to sing high notes and be funny. How come I don't? Because there's nothing written for it. So it was a frustrating 4 years in that way.
I'm sure in your research, because I have had the good fortune of interviewing a lot of people for a project that I am working on, celebrating her in Hello Dolly. And I've interviewed, John Shook and Leroy Reams, and so many people connect with that show. And I've heard the stories of how even with her success, the doors that were shut to her because people tried to pigeonhole her into being one thing, and she would be great in this role, but they couldn't see her in other roles. And she had it all going for her, as you do. Do you find that you also were in this? I mean, you're a very attractive woman, if you don't mind my saying so, and you have this phenomenal voice and you are funny. Do you find that people try to pigeonhole you into being one thing when you are so many other things?
I think they just don't know what to do with me.
Right.
And I get that a lot. Like, I don't know what to do with you. And sometimes I'm guilty of that too. I present a lot of stuff out there. So, like Sir Mix-a-Lot would say, use me. But how, right? So do I do the comedic stuff? Do I do serious stuff? Do I sing high? Do I sing low? Do I play? And so I'm trying the longer in my career to do it all and to figure out what kind of things I can do where I get to do as much as I can in the same amount of time. And Madeline, I think, was the same. So doing the research on her, finding out that nobody knew what to do with her either. She went into Hofstra as a drama major, right? And so she was doing drama, she was doing music, but she was too funny for music, and she was too musical for straight drama. And so she was really stuck a lot. And then she would be on stage thinking she was doing a serious scene, and people in the audience would be bursting out laughing because of the cadence of her voice and because she could go high and low. And she is naturally funny when people do that. And she was just being herself, and she got really puzzled when people would do that. I didn't have people do that to me all the time, and they still don't. I get more like just, okay. So I get more of that. So I felt for her. And the more I read about her and researched her, the more an affinity I felt with her. And I'm sure that first 30 seconds of that Michelob commercial was just like seeing myself and in her.
Well, I'm sure you know the story of her getting cast in MAME and the whole situation with Lucille Ball. Was casting Eunice Burns, and that wasn't Madeline Kahn. She was playing a character.
Right.
If you don't know the story, do you tell the story in your show?
I do. I listen.
Well, everyone, don't tell it. Come see the show with me. So and hear what happened. But
she had a lot of knocks. Madeline did. She really did. For as much success as she has, and we remember her as an icon, she had a lot of stuff going on while she was on the planet.
So when you left Cincinnati, did you come to New York to pursue your career? I'm just interested in knowing the trajectory of how you ended up in Providence or outside of Providence.
Right. I'm in Wakefield. I'm in the middle of the state. So about, close to Matunic, actually. So,
and were you there when Buddy Cianci was in power?
Oh, yeah. I did a parody of him called Bobby Chianti.
I don't believe this because years ago, and I'm going to share this. When I was cast at Theater by the Sea, they were doing their big burlesque show. This was when I was performing as Carol Channing, and they wrote a parody of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, all about Buddy Cianci. why Carol Channing was coming back to Providence. Do you know the story about Carol and Buddy Cianci?
No, but oh my God.
This is your show. I will stick around after the show and I'll tell you the story.
I'll buy you a drink.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. So there's a great story about Carol Channing and Buddy Cianci. And if you don't know Buddy Cianci, Google him, everyone. Quite a character. So how did you end up in Wakefield?
For love. It was all love and marriage. I've been here since 2010. And hello to Joe, who is watching right now. And hi to Dan Chaka, who is my MC for my live stream. And I came here in 2010. Grew up in Columbus, Ohio. After graduation, moved to Washington, D.C. with my first husband. And thought I was going to sing some stuff there. Did some minor singing, but it was right at the beginning of a recession as well. So no jobs, not much to do. Then moved to Michigan, lived in a little town called Hillsdale. So if you do the hand, right, people who live in Michigan know that you do the hand. So Hillsdale is South Central. And there's Detroit and there's Ann Arbor. And lived there for a bunch of years, and then got a divorce. And then I was on Facebook one day, and I was looking at the college alumni news page. And there was this cute photographer that I remembered from undergraduate at Cincinnati. And we caught up again, and I married him in 2010. And that's how I ended up out here.
Good for you. And you've created this incredible career for yourself, not only with the performing that you're doing, but you also are a coach, the piano playing that you do, the shows that you create. One of the things that I want to talk about is the work that you do helping artists create their own solo shows. How did that come about for you?
I've been doing variations of that even before I did my own show. So Kahn Artist is my first completely scripted show, and my director was Faith Prince. I co-wrote it with Rod Ferguson. But before that, I did a whole bunch of kind of quasi, cabaret type shows. I've always been writing for other people. I taught K through 8 music in Catholic schools in the 90s, and I would write scripts for those students. And I liked doing it, and they needed it. So whenever I would see a need, you figure out how to fill it to make sure, things happen. So the kids needed a joke because they're terrified on stage. And I know that if they tell a joke and they kill at the joke, it relaxes them and it makes them feel like winners when they're off and on a stage. So I would write age-appropriate jokes for 10-year-olds. And then when I got to Rhode Island, I didn't know anybody. And so again, the writing kind of came as utility. And I was on the beach and talking to this mom that my husband had introduced me to in Rhode Island. And I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just moved here. I don't know anybody. And she said, well, we have a little theater group with kids, and maybe you could do a little theater thing. And I jokingly just said, I could write you a musical. And she looked at me and she said, could you do that? And so I wrote Quaney the musical for 7 years. And it was a children's musical about the history of Quantickatog, Rhode Island, which was this place where I had just moved to. That Quantickatog is Niantic for extended deserted place of 2 long ponds in succession, or a place of the blackfish. And I wrote the history of Quaney. And it forced me to have to get to know my neighbors and to reach out and to introduce myself to a lot of people and to develop a community. So writing did that for me. So I was writing again for groups of people. And then I had a voice studio, and I realized that I had singers who nobody had enough material for a one-person show or a recital, but they all had little bits. So I started writing music or writing, bits to tie all of their music together. So it really happened very organically over time, but I love doing it.
What is your process when you're working with someone? When someone comes to you and they go, Eden, I got an idea for a show. I want to put something together. How do you start out working with someone that you really don't know? They don't know what they want to do. You don't know what they want to do. What's the jumping off point for both of you?
You have a why. There's always a why. It's I see a lot of people like me where we have some performing experience in some medium or another, whether it's, theater or movies or, straight plays or whatever, but it doesn't fill all that need. And just like Madeline, they have more to offer. They have more to give, and they don't know how to share it. So it starts with that want and that longing. And then it becomes fun. It's like, well, what do we want to talk about? What do you want to tell people that you haven't been able to tell them through Ada Annie, or you haven't been able to tell them through Skin of Our Teeth or whatever? And that begins the process. So, and sometimes they don't know, but usually, just like when you were asking me when I first came on here, what do we have to celebrate? Hi, Mary. What do we have to celebrate? And what do you want people to know about you and about your life, right? Your statement. So we go from there. And then we come up with lists of songs, and then we build from there. I love the process. It's so much fun to get to know people in that way and what makes them musically tick. And then to support them as they go through that process is really a joy.
In Frank Langella's book, he talks about that magical moment, the first time he stepped from the darkness into the light on stage. Do you remember the first time that you stepped out in front of an audience as a solo artist, and what that experience was like for you, and why, what that transformative experience was for you, and why you continued to stay and continue to do that?
Well, Richard, I'm a hack.
Well,
I love applause.
mhm.
And
Welcome to my world.
right, right. I mean, I'm a shill, and I love that. Actually, I love connecting, with people on stage. I sometimes don't think I'm as good at it as I could be, but that's the work that I try to do.
Now let's stop there. Why would you feel that way? I mean, I would not think that about you, just in the few moments that we've been together so far.
I don't know. I think I'm in my head a lot. And that probably comes from classical training too, where when you're classically trained, it's all about making the notes perfect and it's tone. And it's not so much about connection. Oh, my friend Laura's watching. Fourth grade. Yeah.
That's great.
And, yeah. So I think it was realizing that I could make people feel good, by being out there made me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And that I did something for them. I wasn't always sure what I did, but I was glad that I could do that. So either I could, play a piano song and bring some kind of, joy or happiness, or I could play a character and sing songs that they loved to hear and get to have the pleasure of doing that and sharing that. So, sharing. So, yeah. So I guess, connecting those ways, whereas cabaret feels very different because it's such a much stronger personal connection, I think, than other things I've done.
Well, the way you described breaking into cabaret, and my friend Mary is here watching, and I know that she will probably agree with us on the same trajectory. We all know, for me, it was during the 80s, I was going from showcase to showcase to showcase. I was working a lot as an actor. I wasn't getting paid any as it, but I wanted to have a little bit more creative control in terms of the work that I was doing. And that's what brought me into the world of cabaret. And I absolutely love the creative control that I have in terms of what I do. When you first started doing cabaret, were you doing it in Rhode Island? Was it in Cincinnati? Was it in New York? Where was the first place that you did your first show?
Hillsdale, Michigan, 2010.
Okay.
So I was leaving Michigan to come to Rhode Island to get married to my husband. And I wanted to do some kind of a farewell, but I didn't want to do a classical recital because I was already moving out of that life. And I mean, I still sing classically. You can hear it in my voice, but I also wanted to do so much more. So my recitals had begun to turn into slightly more cabaret type things. And even at Cincinnati, I got told that I had a kind of a musical theater voice to my classical, but nobody ever thought about moving me on. So there I was in 2010. And so I thought, well, I did the Queen of the Night. That's a role I've played. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny to do a cabaret based on the Queen of the Night? And then I found a song by Fred Barton called I'm the Queen and You're Not. And it's from, what is that? The Two Svengalis, right?
Oh, okay.
And I loved that entire show. And then I found Miss Gulch Returns. And I loved that entire show. So I built and wrote a show as the Queen of the Night. And I told a little bit of a backstory, but I opened with one of the Queen of the Night's arias from Mozart's Magic Flute. And I closed with Fred's I'm the Queen and You're Not. And I threw Pour Me a Man in the middle because why not? Mm. And so it was so much fun to do that. And, I was leaving. They couldn't fire me anyway. So then I came to Rhode Island and I was doing, some classical things here and there, trying to find my way. And then Ida Zecco, who runs a cabaret here at the Arctic Playhouse. Yeah, yes. She invited me to come and do a cabaret in December of 2016, completely out of nowhere. I think she just saw something that I had done online and thought I might be good at it. And I give her such thanks for taking a chance on me. So that's when I actually built one, and Jim Rice was my pianist for that one. And then we began working together. So every year or so, I would come in and do one of those. Then in 2021, I took the St. Louis Cabaret Conference online. and met Jeff Harner and Karen Mason and Christine Andreas and Faith Prince were the 4 coaches for our cohort. Hit it off with Faith, who of course is another CCM graduate, and completely understood what I was talking about when I said, I love Madeline Kahn and I feel like I've had some of these same experiences through college and beyond. And she said, oh, I totally get it. I want to work with you. So that's how we ended up writing this one.
That's amazing. Those of us who do cabaret, as much as we love being in the spotlight, one of the things that I love about doing cabaret is not just being in the spotlight, it's the collaborative process. It's not just us standing out there by ourselves and reaping the rewards. It's the team that we surround ourselves with. You just mentioned Faith Prince, who I love, love, love. I still remember the first time I saw her on stage, and it still resonates with me deep, deep, deep. Seeing her in Groucho at the Lucille Hotel Theater. I still remember that night. But how did your team begin to fall into place? And what is it about the collaborative process that you love so much when it comes to putting a cabaret show together?
I'm so in my head a lot. It's really nice to have other people be in my head too, Richard. That's the great thing. There's room. And it's nice to know you're not alone, even though you're on stage mostly alone. You've got a great player, and I've had nothing but wonderful pianists play for me for this show. I've had Jim Rice, Becky Menzie, John Cook will be my pianist in New York. And it's such a thrill to get to have them as supportive people, because I've also been on stage when I haven't been as supported. So you can feel the difference. It's nice to know that what you're writing or working on is going to resonate, and so when you have that small creative team with you that you can really trust, I can trust that when Faith or Rod would say that's not going to land the way you'd like it to, then I could trust them and change it, and they're right pretty much all the time. Which how wonderful to feel that and to know that you're being cared for by that group of people. So that's the wonderful thing about cabaret, isn't it? It is. It's a small, very intense working process. And I think that there's no one right way to do it, but having that team is so critically important. And I try to be that for others.
What have you learned about yourself from this particular show?
Oh, gosh. I cried so much when I was writing the show. Nobody told me that cabaret was such a veil of tears. Okay, that's one thing they didn't tell me. But I think actually, and I look for that now in clients, like you got to cry at least once.
Oh, I cry on a daily basis just to let
Like my live stream is just for fun. Nobody cries on my live stream. But when you're in the seat in front of me in a dark little place, you better be crying. Yes. And when we're writing, I think the crying tells us that, we're getting to something that's really real and important. People make the mistake of thinking that cabaret is just like a confession with glitter, right? No, it's not meant to be a confessional, but it is meant to be truthful and real. And you can share as much as you're comfortable sharing, but the audience can tell if you're lying. And they can tell if you're holding back. And so you have to figure out a way to say it in a way that connects and resonates without killing you. And
Did you see the article that came out this week about the comedian that they have found? I mean, that so much of his story are based on lies. And, the writer who wrote this article said at first he thought, well, who cares? He's a storyteller. But as he dug deeper, it bothered him that these were lies that he was telling on stage. It's a very interesting, telling article. I advise everyone to go and read it. I don't want to out the comedian, so I'm not going to mention the name during the show, but it's a very interesting article about truth on stage for all artists.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to confess, that you hit the squirrel when you were driving when you were 17, but you do have to be truthful about what you talk about. And I think the audiences can really tell a difference. And so when cabaret gets a bad rap, I think it's because of that. Because they've gone to one where somebody was hiding, or somebody thought that a cabaret was just putting together a bunch of songs but not revealing anything about themselves. And I got dinged for that. When I was first doing, my very first rundown of how the Madeline show was going to go, they said, Eden, this reads like a book report about Madeline Kahn. We know nothing about you. And I think that's a mistake.
Did that come out in a review?
No. That came out when we were first writing.
Okay.
So, but it was my first time really delving into that kind of material. And I was nervous about it at first. I thought, do I really want to talk about this? And so then I just started typing a whole lot. And then we started pulling out stories. And my co-writer, Rod Ferguson, he pointed to a few stories. He said, I want to know more about this one and this one and this one. And that began, the jumping off point for what I was going to talk about. Mm-hmm. So even though I've had highs and lows in my life, there's a lot of stuff I'm not going to talk about in this show because I'm respectful of other people who were involved. And also there's some stories I just don't want to tell, or I have to figure out a better way of telling it that it's not confessional. It's not taking my skin off my arms.
And it's also respectful of your audience as well, because you want them to have a good time.
Right. They're not there for confession. And I think that's what a lot of people mistake it for, or they've seen one that was that. And no, real cabaret is stories, it's connection, mm-hmm. It's about the audience. And mm-hmm. that's what I love about it.
Well, let's talk about another aspect of your life, and that's the live stream that you do. I mean, did that come about because of COVID?
I did a few before COVID hit and really enjoyed it. In my voice studio, we released a few albums. And the first one was actually right at the start of the pandemic. Yeah, I guess it was. And so I did like an infomercial live stream to showcase my singers for that. And I enjoyed it so much, I decided to keep going. So the Eden Show, and there's my graphic right there.
Yes.
Started in January of 2021. We've done 86 episodes. And I interviewed some of the same people you did, Richard. So Mary was a guest on my show, and Patrice was a guest on my show. And when I took Kahn Artist to Chicago, I interviewed a bunch of Chicago cabaret artists. So it's been great to get to do that, and I'm sure that you feel the same way, that it's fun to get to talk about, to talk with people that you wouldn't get to meet normally in real life. So that's what I love about it. The other thing that I like to do is play live for my guests. So what you're seeing here is my basic live stream setup. And usually my MC Dan is sitting right next to me, or he's at his place in not too far away. He's my personal lawyer, MC. That's what I call him. And he sings and performs as well. And we interview one musical guest per hour, and then I play live for them. So even if they were far away, I could play live for them. And that really thrilled me, especially in that time where so many musicians had no work at all, that I could do something to help get them out and to get them performing, even when there was no performing to be had.
What was the biggest impact that the pandemic had on you as an artist? I mean, it changed all of us in terms of the way that we look at our work, the way that we approach our work now that we have come out of this, and it's still popping up its ugly head. A local theater had to cancel all of its programs for the weekend because of COVID. Just a couple of weeks ago, Sweeney Todd, the two leads, Josh Groban and Annalie Ashford, were out of the show one afternoon because of COVID. It's still with us, folks. So what is it how has it impacted you the most over the past few years and now coming back into live performing again?
That's a great question. My live stream has been on hiatus since June, because I'm doing so much live performing, and I wasn't getting, my viewership in summertime tends to go down. So I'm probably restarting it in January of 2024. And yeah, Dan, I'm just telling you that, by the way, we'll be restarting in January of 2024.
Great.
I spent so much time in the pandemic helping other voice teachers get online. That was the first thing I did. I was already teaching voice lessons online when the pandemic hit, and I was already coaching people and things like that. So I knew those skills, and I saw so many musicians and voice teachers who did not have those skills, who all of a sudden saw their income drop to zero, and they were in dire straits. So me and another group of voice teachers, we learned as quickly as we could all the steps that we would need, and then we said, we are available to teach you and coach you as fast as we can. So that's what I did for like the first 3 or 4 months, was just practice getting online myself, work with my clients, and help every single person I could get online. Then I worked with a teacher in North Carolina named Wendy Jones, who's a fantastic jazz teacher. And we got together one day. We'd never met in person. And she said, would you help me figure some of this live stream stuff out? I was presenting for National Association of Teachers of Singing. The acronym is NATS. And so we got together and we tried it, and it worked. So there she was, almost 1,000 miles away from me, and I was playing jazz for her in real time. And you can see that on my YouTube channel. You can see our experiments. It's called low latency. And all it does is it speeds up an audio connection through the computer. You can do it. So, and I'm here. I'm still able to do that with anybody who wants to do it. Hi, Carol. There's one of my other people as well, Carol O'Shaughnessy.
We love Carol
Yeah.
O'Shaughnessy, and she's on tonight. I love her so much.
Yeah, she's great.
She's one of my favorite people, and we actually got together for dinner just before the pandemic hit. So I think it was one of the last dinners out, Carol, before everything shut down. One of the things that really I've taught myself so many things during the pandemic, in terms of creating my own artwork, in terms of doing this, which I had never done before the pandemic. So many things that I've learned. What have you learned about yourself, or that you've taught, that new hats that you wear that you knew nothing about before the pandemic?
This was it, right? It was just live streaming as an option. I had looked at Twitch, and YouTube, some live streams a little bit here and there, but didn't know if I was going to be doing that. And then again, it's always at the service of my clients. They're the ones, and the service of my fellow musicians. It was, what can I do to help them? I had the resources, I had the time, and I had the ability to withstand a whole lot of failure. Because as you know, Richard, live streaming involves a whole lot of failure. It involves, restarting when things break down and fixing the camera that breaks down.
No, let me ask you, I mean, your shows, are they pre-taped?
No, live, completely live.
So, I want you to humor me for just a moment, Eden. Because a lot of people out there may think, we turn on a light, we turn on a switch, and the show happens. Explain to them what the hours are like leading up to our shows.
First, you start by getting your stuff in place. It should be a blues, right?
Yes.
So no, it is a.
You want to write the theme for my show? Let's talk.
I would totally do it. I wrote the theme for mine, right? Yeah. It's so many steps, and that's what stops people. That's what stopped them from being online in the first place, long before the pandemic. And then when the pandemic forced us all to be together, it's like, oh my God, what do we do, right? But a lot of this technology was already being used before the pandemic. That's what I discovered. And it just wasn't used to the huge volume that is used now, right? Probably the maximum was like 2021. So first it was just getting all the video set up on StreamYard, which you're using tonight, was the first one I used as well, very happily and successfully for a long time. Now I use Restream, I use Ecamm, I'll use anything, and I'll try them all out. And I had a trusted group of people to try out all this tech with over and over again. And we would just fail and fail and fail. And then we would talk about it, and then we'd get back on and try again. That's what you really need. I called Wendy my tech wife, because she's willing to put up with me and I'm willing to put up with her. And we still test out tech all the time together, just different things. I get to meet her in person in just a couple of weeks for the first time in 3 years. I can't wait. But the low latency came about. That technology existed back in the 2000s. It was invented by a guy who worked in Stanford, and he knew Steve Jobs. But he was a cellist, and he wanted to be able to have lessons with his cello teacher who lived in Southern California, and he was up north. So he invented the technology to do it. And it was a program called Jack. So there are now like 10 different connectors that you can subscribe to online that all have the name Jack in them in some way, shape, or form, and they're all based on this original one. But I tested them with Wendy because I said, that's the answer. If we can figure out how to make the piano and the singer or the instrumentalist be able to work together in real time, we have solved it. And then everybody can have lessons together and the music continues. And I said, but if we can figure out how to live stream it at the same time, we're done. That's it. And so in December of 2020, Wendy and I were probably the first people in the United States to live stream this connected concert together. But it was because we didn't give up. And we just kept doing it and doing it. And I still teach people how to do this. So for any reason. So no, the pandemic's over, right? We don't need this. No, as soon as cold and flu season kicks in, you need it. And if you want to be able to jam with people you've never met in your life, then it's really useful to get to do this. So I'm really thrilled I have that skill set, and I'm happy to share it with anybody.
Well, you just amaze me on so many levels. I want to have a little fun with you, if you don't mind, in our remaining moments. I am all about the creative process and positivity and spirituality and tying it all together. So I put together some questions based on my readings today. And but before we begin, I have got 9 mystery cards laid out. So you pull the number 1 through 9 for your first question, and then we'll go from there just to talk about your creative process.
Okay, mystery card from 1 to 9. 5.
And here we are. And it says, what do you regret not doing when you were younger?
You got a year? What do I regret not doing when I was younger? I don't know. I try not to live in regret, right? Would I say having more kids?
Okay.
I would have been okay maybe to have 1 or 2 more kids. That was not my path. I didn't get lucky. I had 1 and a stepchild, which is great. So that, and even the mistakes though, I'm glad they led to the good things, right? You know, like I've been married twice, but I wouldn't change that first one. And because that led to me appreciating what I have now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, not buying Apple stock. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, should have bought some Apple stock.
Great. When, WIN, can you celebrate this week?
Getting to do somebody else's live stream. That's wonderful.
Well, I hope
Are
you
you
had a
kidding?
good time tonight. I love this. This is
Yeah.
great.
I mean, setting up for this made me remind myself of what it was like to set up for my own live streams. I had all the same anxiety. It was amazing.
Wow.
I got my lights up. I had to test my cameras. And Dan knows that I do this. You know, I am really shaquad, which is what we call being crazy out here. You know, shaquad about getting all set up. But it was funny. And I was asking myself, I wonder if Richard feels this way when he's setting up too.
God. Absolutely. It's crazy. How would you describe your best teacher in terms of what you've learned in this business?
Caring. He cared about me as a person first. I felt that all the time. That was my voice teacher, Professor Paul Hickfang from Ohio State. And he would always, kiss me on both cheeks, European style, when I walked in the door. And he would hold my hands and say, you know what? I love you. And he meant it. And that's why my son Paul is named Paul. He's named after my voice teacher. And he died in 2009. And I wish he could have seen this. He would have probably been a little skeptical about it. Eden, are you sure you want to do this? But he would have loved it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What have you discovered about you through your life's work?
It's I mean, I'm a Christian, and I believe that you're given, all of these gifts by God, higher power, whatever you like to call it. And that Irma Bombeck had this quote where she said, I want to get to the end of my life and to be able to say to God, I used everything you gave me. And I feel that way a lot. I want to say I used it all and I left nothing on the table. And that I used it all in the service for myself, but also in the service of people around me. And that I've left the world, I'm not going to invent, something wonderful, huge in my life. But if I have helped people have better lives and express themselves better, and get some joy out of this gift of music that we're given, then that's good. What a great
way to go through life.
There's my son saying hi too. So.
Name 3 people that you truly admire in this business and why.
Faith Prince. She's generous. She's hilarious. She has done a lot. And she is willing to share her experience with others in a very generous way. And she pulls no punches while she does it. So generous and truthful. Other people in this business. I know. I mean, I'm lucky that I've gotten to work with them, right? Mm-hmm. Rod.
And they've gotten to work with you.
I'm thrilled. It's been a blessing. It really has. Rod, who is so gifted and talented, and is done one-person shows for himself. He writes with others as a co-writer. From him, I've just learned about the value of really taking care with your words. And every time he would carve out what I was trying to say, he reminded me the power of a good editor. Mm. But you have to listen to your editor, and you got to be able to trust them. And I trusted him, and I knew that he had my best interests at heart always, and still does. And then who's the third? I mean, there's so many to choose from. I feel so lucky. I've gotten to work with so many. I say Jim Rice. Because he saw me before I did, Kahn Artist. And he's such an incredibly gifted, talented piano player. So when I first heard Fred Barton, play, I wanted to have that style. And I started to work on that style. And Jim and Fred have a lot in common in that way with their stride piano and just the showy way that they play, that wonderful classic cabaret style. So occasionally during the pandemic, Jim would give me a piano lesson. And he'd say, your right hand, this is how you do this run. This is how you do this run. But he's so generous with the people that he works with, and he's so incredibly talented, and he wears it very lightly. That's what I love about him.
Well, I have been very fortunate to have Jim Rice as my musical director. He played for me years ago in Provincetown. I love him, I miss him, and I hope he's watching so that he knows that how much he's loved. So Jim, thank you for so much. Do you make New Year's resolutions? And if so, did you keep your New Year's resolutions this year?
I do not, because I know I'm going to fail at it.
Okay.
I think about it. I did, sometimes I would do the word and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my word for this year was enjoy. And I'm glad that has pretty much come to pass. So when I do Kahn Artist in New York, that'll be like, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th time I've done this show. Started in July of 2022 at the Arctic with Ida. And I didn't have that on my radar that I was going to get to do this in New York. I wanted to, but I was a little bit nervous about doing it. And then I did the O'Neill Cabaret Conference in August. And Lenny Watts was one of our coaches, Lenny and Natalie Douglas. And Lenny said, "Why haven't you brought it?" And I said, "I think I'm waiting for the right time." He said, "Eden, now's the right time." So I got off with him and contacted Tanya the next week. And that's why I'm doing it.
And
So,
I'm going to be there. I'm going to be
there. Good.
I'm going to be your opening performance. I can't wait.
Good. I'm so glad. But yeah, it's been really, really, fun to get to do this and to perform in this still new way for me. But I feel really at home in this. It fits about as well as this top does.
Oh, that's wonderful. If you repeat it today for 100 days, would life be better or worse?
If I repeat it today for 100 days, would life be better or worse? That's a really deep question, Richard. You're good at these. I ask things like boxers and briefs.
Well, we'll get to that. I'll ask that.
I wear what's clean.
I'll ask that when you come back.
Okay, good. I'll have a theme song ready for you. You can put me in the corner over there. No, today was a great day. If I had to do Groundhog Day this day, I would do it again. I totally would. Good. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
What 3 words best describe you and what is important to you?
Energetic. I get told that a lot, energetic. Funny. And I think without realizing it, I just say what I'm thinking. And sometimes when I'm diplomatic, it comes out as really funny. So that, and I hope generous. That's the trait that I admire in so many other people. And I hope to do that for people I come into contact with too.
Well, great. What small step can you take today that will put you on the path to something wonderful tomorrow?
Drink water. Right. This has water in it. I'll tell you that. When Dan was on my live stream, he would make me old fashions. So Dan, he'll tell you this. He would do old fashions. He would go into my kitchen and make me an old fashioned. And the second half of the show was always really good.
Well, does Daniel make, I don't drink, but does Daniel make house calls? Would he
probably
ever
would.
To New York to co-host with me sometime?
He probably would.
I would love that.
I would talk to my people, Richard.
That's great. How would others describe your values?
That's a good question. And maybe they can write in the chat, guys. How would you describe my values?
Yeah, this is a good chance to do that.
Absolutely. It's again, I value honesty, and I value a sense of humor, even if while you're being honest. And I value an attitude of we're going to figure out how to do it. I guess you call it a can-do attitude, right? It makes me so sad when I see people just say, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. And it's like, you can. You just need help in figuring out how. So let me help you figure it out, or let me, at least get you in the right direction to figure it out. And I've had so many people who've done that for me in my life. And every time I've done that for other people, it's so satisfying.
And my last question for you is, what activities do you enjoy most when it comes to your work?
Oh, this,
Well,
I love just sitting and playing, right?
I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot to take us out with a song, if you don't mind.
I'd be happy to.
Great. But before we get there, I want to thank first of all, this hour flew for me. And I hope that you will come back. As it says on the scroll on the bottom, you're going to be at Don't Tell Mama. This is not the only performance.
Right.
You have several performances there, but October 15th is the opening performance, and that's the performance that I'm going to. So if anyone would like to join me, and then perhaps we can all go to Joe Allen's afterwards, just putting it out there, please join me, and we'll have a lot of fun that day. I also want to thank you. I want to bring this back on screen for just a moment. Here's a larger version of this. October 15th at 4 p.m., October 16th at 7 p.m., November 21st at 7 p.m., and December 2nd at 1 p.m. So you've got 4 chances to see it. So please go out and see the show if you can. And I hope that you'll be able to join me if any of you will be in New York at that time. I end all of my, and I want to thank you, Eden, for sponsoring my newsletter. I have a newsletter. It comes out every Monday. I don't spam, edbert.com, and sign up for my newsletter. And if you're interested in sponsoring a show or the newsletter, please reach out to me and let me know about that. And we can get the word out about what you're doing as well. I end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Pick up the phone and call someone that you have not spoken to in a long time. If you go to your Facebook page where your friends are listed, there are 9 boxes. Go to the 9th box and pick up the phone and call that person. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. And let that person know how they have made an impact on your life. And by doing so, what you're going to do is you're going to make an impact on their life. On Saturday, I had the good fortune, I'm going to say it was good, that I was asked. I spoke at a very dear friend's memorial in New York. And as everyone got up and spoke, everyone was laughing and sharing these incredible stories about my dear friend, Craig Dudley. And it was a celebration of his life. And all I kept thinking was how much fun it would have been for him to be in that room. To answer us back and to talk about this. Yeah. And we need to do this for each other while we're around to do so. And I know that we can't do this with everybody all the time, but if you pick one person each day to do that for, you are going to change the trajectory of your life. And by doing so, you're going to change their lives as well. So it's very, very important that you do so. I have a dear friend, Sean Moniger, and he says, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different size boats. And I always say, I don't care what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side. And with that, Eden, I'm going to leave the screen and you've got the final word. It could be about anything that we spoke about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any final message that you wish that we had talked about. And when you finish saying whatever it is that you want to say, I hope that you'll sing a song. And when you say goodbye, the show will end. So you don't have to worry about how do I end this.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's good.
It's all yours. Everyone, the Garden of Eden. I love it. It's all yours.
Oh my goodness. This is how it feels like my own live stream. Thank you all. Thank you, Richard, so much for having me on tonight. I so appreciate it. So, yes, please come and see me at Kahn Artist. Don't Tell Mama. You're welcome to subscribe to all of my socials and fun things like that. There they are, right? I have a link tree as well. You might be able to see it right there, and that has all of my different socials on it. And this has been delightful, absolutely delightful. Madeline and meant so much to me. And I didn't realize it, really, until I started writing the show, how she had been part of the fabric of my whole life. And that she had really been the blueprint of everything I wanted to do. So I think I'll end with a song that is known for her. I'm tired, sick and tired of love. I've had my fill of love from below and above. Tired of being admired, tired of love uninspired. Let's face it, I'm tired. I've been with thousands of men, again and again. They promise the moon. They're always coming and going and going and coming, and always too soon, right? Tired of playing the game. Ain't it a friggin' shame? I'm so, let's face it, everything below the waist is kaput. Thank you, Richard. Over to you. And good night, everybody.